Hi there, everyone. Welcome to The Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Eveling. It's April 22nd. Children's book writer and illustrator Tasha Tudor once said, "It's exciting to see things coming up again, plants that you've had for 20 or 30 years. It's like seeing an old friend." This made me think of the old saying, "Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other gold." Perennials are old friends, gold friends. They're the best kind of garden friends. Now, they may not be as flashy or exciting as the gardener's silver friends, annuals, but they have staying power. Peony, daylily, hosta, iris, baptisia, catmint. These are just a handful of some of the longest-lived perennials. Here's today's brevities. Today is Earth Day, a celebration that started in 1970. Next year will be the 50th anniversary. And it's the birthday of August Wilhelm Eichler, born this day in 1839. Eichler was a German botanist, and he developed one of the first widely used natural systems of plant classification. Most importantly, it was the first system based on evolution. Eichler spent many years of his life working tirelessly as a private assistant to the naturalist Carl Friedrich Philipp von Martinus. Martinus had traveled to Brazil, and he'd collected over 20,000 specimens. He spent the final 3 decades of his life documenting his findings in a book called Flora Brasiliensis, which Eichler helped to edit. Generally speaking, a flora is a book describing all the plants from a set geographic area. When Martinus died in 1868, Eichler carried on the work of Flora Brasiliensis unassisted. It was a labor of love. After Eichler died, botanist Ignatius Urban continued on with the project until its completion. Today, Wilhelm Eichler Strasse, or Street in Dresden, is named in his honor. And it was William Eichler who said, "The felling of the first tree is the beginning of human civilization. The felling of the last is his end." On this day in 1958, Gloria Galeano was born. Known as the Queen of the Palms, Galeano was a Colombian botanist and agronomist, and she devoted her entire career to studying and classifying the palm family. Galeano classified more than 260 species of palm in 45 wild genera. It's difficult to imagine, but at the beginning of the 1980s, Colombian palm taxonomy was almost non-existent. Galeano worked in concert with her partner Rodrigo Bernal to resolve this issue. After decades of work, they published their exhaustive volume of Flora of Colombian Palms. Galeano never tired in her devotion to the subject of palms. She was the co-author or author of some 17 books, 15 chapters, 68 articles, 10 electronic works. And when Galeano first saw pictures of the newly discovered Sabineria magnifica palm, named for her daughter Sabina with Rodrigo, she described it as the most beautiful of all Colombian palms. And she was remembered for telling her students, any project in which we would get involved should be thrilling and make our blood boil. Galeano was well aware of the harvest impacts of Colombian plants and neotropical palms. In June of 2015, Galeano organized the World Palm Symposium. At the event, she revealed that less than 4% of the tropical dry forest remains in the Colombia-Caribbean region. Galeano died in 2016. Today, her legacy lives on in the plans for conservation and sustainable use of the native wax palm. On this day in 1775, William Bartram left Charleston, South Carolina on horseback to explore the Cherokee Nation near Franklin, North Carolina. In addition to his botanical discoveries, his journal describes traveling through a terrible storm during his journey. Here's what he wrote. It was now afternoon. I approached a charming vale. Darkness gathers round. Far distant thunder rolls over the trembling hills. All around is now still as death. A total inactivity and silence seems to pervade the earth, the birds afraid to utter a chirrup. Nothing heard but the roaring of the approaching hurricane. Now the lofty forests bend low beneath its fury. The face of the earth is obscured by the deluge descending from the firmament, and I am deafened by the din of thunder. The tempestuous scene damps my spirits, and my horse sinks underneath me at the tremendous peals as I hasten for the plain. I began to ascend the Jura Mountains, at which length I accomplished and rested on the most elevated peak, from whence I beheld, with rapture and astonishment, a sublimely awful scene of power and magnificence, a world of mountains piled upon mountains. Today's book recommendation is The Kew Gardener's Guide to Growing Houseplants, The Art and Science of Growing Your Own Houseplants by Kay McGuire. It's a beautifully illustrated, giftable gardening reference book with 70 life-changing plants and 12 home-transforming projects. And today's garden chore is to prioritize planting trees and shrubs in your garden. This is a great tip from gardener Lou Nichols on Twitter, one of my favorite people to follow. Lou points out that especially if your garden is on a windy spot, trees and shrubs should be your first investment. Lou says it best when she says, "You may not notice them as much as other firework plants, but they create a backdrop, a shelter break, and a cover for birds." Lou is short for Louise, and she's the head gardener in a wonderful garden called Alting Wick. I'll have a link to her Twitter feed on today's show notes. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. While researching August Wilhelm Eichler, I ended up on the Berlin Botanic Garden website. Eichler was the director of the garden from 1879 to 1887, almost a decade. And in one of their more recent annual reports, they shared this interesting tidbit regarding the Eichler tenure in Berlin. Here's what it said. This was an eventful time with world's fairs, the invention of electricity, and rapid industrialization. There's no question that the director of a botanic garden would have been preoccupied by such inventions, but a recent find has provided us with absolute proof that this was so. In the attic of a residential building that almost certainly once belonged to the Eichler family, a box of handwritten papers, galley proofs, herbarium material, and correspondence was found. This legacy is currently being cataloged by Peter Hirsch, and I can't wait to hear what Peter reveals to us. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at the website at thedailygardener.org. And be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all of your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. And while you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community, and then the group will pop right up, and then you can request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team over at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.